the technology that's available now is so, I wish I had it. I might have been able to learn a rise ball a whole lot faster knowing, oh, yeah, it's spinning in the right direction versus now I got to wait until I go out to a game and I'm comfortable enough to throw it and find out, oh, nope, that doesn't spin with backspin because I have to ask the umpire for a new ball.
Whether you live north, east, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. This is Ken Kraus here with you, as always, with my good buddy, Jay Bolden. Jay, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Ken. It's beautiful fall weather finally, which is awesome. I felt like we've had just got over our third summer here in the Midwest, and it actually feels super nice. Kids got a game tonight, so it's going to be a little chilly, but it'll be fun and all that good stuff. How about yourself? How you been?
I've been doing well, getting used to the time zone again. Just getting back into the swing of doing lessons, but, off to a good start. I moved inside now, so, just getting acclimated to being back indoors again. A problem you don't usually have.
No, I like the indoors all the time, so never have to worry about the elements. So, yeah, it's good. I'm excited, though. Our fall ball just kind of wrapped up last week and had a great fall. Now looking forward to taking a little break and then getting into some individual time with some of the pitchers and catchers. So, excited for this upcoming season. We've got a lot of talent, really excited to get going with these kids and see what kind of improvements we can do here in this in the off season here.
All righty. Well, that sounds good. Just real quick, since as we're recording this, it's the beginning of October. You're a Halloween guy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. But Ken, I have to pick, I used to do all the getting dressed up stuff, but now it's been the inflatables. Whatever it is, I got to be in an inflatable. And that has to go with the weather because some Halloweens, as we know, are 90 degrees. Other Halloweens, we're in the middle of a blizzard. To get in the inflatable ones, I'm out of those elements every time, and it's a good time. So last year I was a Minion. The year before that I was Oogly Boogly. And the year before that I was a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So all blow-ups. So really excited. My kids get into it still. The wife decorates. It's a great time of year. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a Halloween guy myself. I've got a big display out in front of the house, a whole graveyard thing, some of which I made myself and some of which I've just bought at Spirit Halloween and other stores along the way. Definitely to look forward to it. It's a big production on the actual day of Halloween with fog machines and a professional sound system going and all kinds of crazy things, all for the 12 kids that show up at my house.
We're usually pretty packed, but it has been going down over the years as the kids get older. So
yeah, I'm thinking maybe we're going to try giving out full-size candy bars this year, see if the word gets out. Maybe we get a few more people.
There you go. But you didn't tell us, what are you going to be for Halloween?
Oh, I'm my usual ghoul. It's basically Beetlejuice in various forms.
Awesome. Well, enough about us. Do you want to give a little intro or information about this awesome guest that we have today with us?
I sure do. So we're really delighted to be able to speak with today's guest because he's had an amazing coaching career that started when he was just 14 years old. Our thanks once again to Rick Pauly for introducing us to him. Our guest has nearly 20 years of college experience coaching in a variety of conferences, including the SEC, CAA, Patriot, Conference USA, Pac-12, and now the Big Ten. This time includes 5 seasons as head coach at the Division I level at Bryant University, as well as coaching in the NCAA tournament with the University of Memphis and the University of Arizona. As a volunteer assistant at Arizona, he was part of the staff that led the team to a runner-up finish at the Women's College World Series, the last time the school appeared in the championship game. Other stops along his coaching journey include 2 stints as an assistant coach at Towson, plus coaching at Holy Cross, Simmons College in Massachusetts, and Piedmont College, now Piedmont University in Georgia. He also recently served as Director of Player Development at the University of Georgia. Our guest is primarily known for his expertise as a pitching coach, where he focused on helping pitch design and strategy for the staffs at various schools. In addition to his current position as an assistant at Rutgers University, our guest has also been named as one of the coaches for the USA softball men's 23 and under national team. So it'll be interesting to get his perspective on coaching men's fast pitch players versus women's fast pitch athletes. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm From the Coach's Mouth podcast welcome to Mr. Nick French.
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get to talk to you guys for a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. We appreciate your time today. So we're gonna jump right in because you've had a very extensive coaching background, and I want to dig into that along with the analytics and the data that you do too. So just give us a little bit of how you first got into coaching softball and like what inspired you to make this a career. You started so young at 14. Where did that come from?
So my dad started coaching in the late 70s when nobody wore helmets, girls still used wood bats, and the slap was considered a bunt attempt. And so he started coaching my aunts in, I think, 1977. And by 1982, which was the year I was born, he was coaching in college. So I guess I started by being babysat by the kids on the team at the end of the bench when my mom had to go to work and dad had a game. So I literally grew up in dugouts my entire life. And so, my family vacations were travel ball nationals back when you had to qualify and there weren't 14 different choices for you to go to. You went wherever the ASA or there were a couple other organizations, but wherever they put it in the middle of nowhere. So that's really how I got started, was just always being around the game and running around with a bat in my hand and asking somebody to pitch to me. And then it turned out I couldn't really hit, and I was a better basketball player. I actually played basketball in college, so for a little bit, and then kind of came back to softball. I started coaching with him when I was 14 or 15, and by 16, I was the pitching coach of the high school varsity team. So it was interesting to be coaching the pitchers in a game on Thursday and back in math class with them on Friday.
Yeah. How did that go? I mean, was it something? Did they listen to you?
Yeah, I mean, they did, because it's like any other job. You kind of have to prove you know what you're doing, and that I think you always have to prove that you care about them. But obviously, in that case, like, they were my friends. This is my high school team. We were representing our town, and so you just kind of have to prove you know what you're doing. And there wasn't a pitching coach at the time because my dad had given it up for a little bit and was focused on some other things. And so I got kind of roped into coming back and helping out. And I guess I caught the bug. And, to be honest, I never thought you could make a living at it because, in the Northeast in the 80s, you coached in college for $5,000 and tried to go do other work and, recruited when you could, usually, during travel, by coaching a travel ball team. One of the rival coaches that my dad coached against in the 80s in his conference was Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. Brian Kelly got the job because he was a grad assistant on the football team and they just needed somebody to coach softball. So they said, here, go figure it out. And so Brian called my dad. Like that's where the level of importance that athletic departments put on women's sports in the 80s. And even into the early 90s, like, full-time jobs were rare. And so, I never really thought you could make a living at it. And so I went to college doing other things, and I was going to be a high school coach and a basketball, high school teacher and a basketball coach and a softball coach and go from there. And I got a college opportunity in 2008, mainly because they needed an SID, and I could do that with my journalism degree. And, for 18 straight years after that, someone has called and asked if I wanted to coach again. So here I am.
Well, that's cool. It's funny how sometimes, just different things can come up, how our pathways kind of lay themselves out. Maybe not be the original plan you had, but it's still something that takes you where you should end up being at some point.
It was definitely a plan I would have liked to have. I was just realistic that I didn't think I could ever make a living at it. Still not really sure you can.
Hey, Nick, I want to ask you, how did you get into the pitching side of things? Was your dad a pitcher?
Yeah,
or
my dad coached pitcher. Well, my dad had to learn pitching first, but then ultimately he played a little men's fast pitch. He was just okay. But he was sort of where we grew up. He was the pitching coach for a long time in the 80s and 90s. So he had a lot of lessons and things like that. So, I learned how to do it by catching a lot of lessons. I was 10, 11 years old and catching the ball, getting balls off the shins, and him telling me, son, it hurts a whole lot less if you use the glove. I don't want to hear you complain.
No equipment, huh?
Oh, God, no. I didn't squat. I mean, I'd love to say he taught me to pitch, but just like any kid, like I never thought he was really very smart. So I didn't listen to him.
Yeah. But you kind of
I'd pitch back when I was catching lessons in high school. I'd start pitching it back, and if I threw it over a kid's head, over the pitcher's head, he'd be like, "It's not your lesson." It's like, okay, all right.
Yeah. But you kind of picked it up along the way, maybe by osmosis. You weren't necessarily listening actively, but you started to see.
I was listening actively, but I mean, if you're just listening, it's hard. I mean, how I taught myself to pitch, I threw at a wall all the time by myself. I joke. The dirty secret was I was living in an apartment that I didn't love my roommate at the time, and so I just need to get out of the house a couple hours at a time, 3, 4, 5 days a week. So when the weather turned, I just started going up to the park and throwing at a wall until I had to go back and deal with what I was dealing with.
So you've been doing this a long time. What are some of the changes you've seen in the game since you started coaching?
I think the biggest one is the specialization of all positions. Like I said, my dad was giving lessons for $20 an hour in the 90s. Like that wasn't unheard of for pitchers because just nobody knew how to pitch. But he was doing $20 an hour until about 2014 or 15 when I made him raise his rate slightly. But in any event, there wasn't hitting lessons. There wasn't fielding lessons. Now hitting's caught up to pitching a lot. There's a whole lot more offense in the game. I think it's a good thing, even though I have a pitching background. I also love hitting. I've coached hitters at the college level too. I think that and defenses are a lot better. Everyone can play catch at a high level now, moving their feet, all these things that just, 25, 30, 35 years ago, they weren't as good at. It was pitching dominant. And now I don't think it is. Like, obviously, if you are really good in the circle, you're still going to be dominant. But we used to joke in my newspaper days that, the running gag was always, the reporter almost always showed up and missed the first inning and would miss the only run of the game. You get stuck in traffic or you're trying to find a high school field when you're a reporter and you don't know. Rarely do they play at the high school. So you're trying to find a municipal park or something. And you get there and you're like, oh, it's the top of the second. Whew, okay, I didn't miss much. Anybody score? Yeah, it's 1-0. And then nothing happens for the next 6 innings. And that was the running gag at all levels of high school softball back then was, first one to score wins. And now it's definitely not the case.
Well, so Nick, I want to ask you, I'm sorry, Ken.
Oh, I was just going to say that I even remember that watching college games on TV when they would, record them and then they'd play them back later. And you'd be over there and be, so you get to the bottom of the 4th inning and then they would say, all right, we're going to jump ahead. It's now the top of the 6th.
Right.
Because basically it was, okay, nothing happened.
Yep. You didn't miss anything. Moving on.
Yep.
So, Nick, I was going to ask you a question. How do you feel about this specialization, especially at younger ages? I think, as a dad, I've got a basically a 10-11-year-old who's, we're just coming out of rec ball. And I don't, she's good at a position, but I don't want to pigeonhole her into that position. How do you feel about that? I don't want to, at 9U, do we know who really is the best shortstop or second baseman or outfielder on the team when it's all said and done? How do you feel about it?
Not necessarily, but I think it's good that there is the coaching available to go take fielding lessons, hitting lessons, and pitching lessons. I think too often before it was, well, you're really tall at 9, so we're going to teach you how to pitch.
Yeah.
And, specialization is kind of a dirty word that's thrown around. And it's not like, I still think kids should go play soccer and basketball and volleyball and all those other things. but it's not a bad idea to learn position specific stuff. And, kids do tend not to learn well in groups nowadays.
Yeah,
so,
very true.
Just going to practice and being like, we're going to do a hitting practice with 15 kids on your rec team. You're probably not accomplishing a whole lot, because even the kids who are focused are going to get distracted by the other kids and, the ones who really want to do it. So I think if you can afford it, doing some of those, I don't think you need to go, spend $100 an hour. Yeah, but, like we do some stuff here on weeknights, and I think we charge $60 an hour. It's not a big deal. And we get a lot of younger kids, and, the more you can teach fundamentals at that age, I think is real important. A joke when it comes to throwing and catching is that when I teach coaches clinics with this, I describe it as long division. Okay. When your kid brings home long division the first time and says, Dad, I have to show my work, and you haven't had to show your work in long division since you were in 4th grade because you've just been using a calculator. Well, you don't remember all the steps to do it correctly as well, right? Yep. Well, that's honestly throwing and catching. Someone taught you how to do that at 10. And if you don't know, now you have to show your work to your 10-year-old. You don't really remember. It's like, it's out there just like this. Just squeeze the glove. Like, there's a bunch of processes, a bunch of steps in that process that gets lost if you haven't been doing it every day. And then you're going to naturally get frustrated because your kid doesn't understand what you're trying to explain, when in reality, you've probably missed the important steps like left-right catch with your feet, or right-left catch, depending on your left or your righty, moving your feet to come to the ball, things like that. You're just used to, hey, you catch it, take it out of your glove. Well, if you take it out of your glove on this side of you, on the left side of your shoulder, it's a long way to go. You're going to put yourself in bad positions. Like, there are specific steps to get it correct that your average parent doesn't really remember.
Very true. Very true. So you talked about your dad a lot, was one of your biggest influences growing up. Were there any other people on your journey here that you've been on that have been, people that you've looked up to, or the person maybe you lean on when you need some help as well too? Do you have anybody that's kind of helped you out through the years besides your dad?
I think it's kind of split. Yeah, there's plenty of mentors. I mean, I've gotten to work for 3,000 win coaches, or close to 1,000 win coaches, and Mike Candrea, Lou Harris Champer, Lisa Costello. Lisa's close to, I think she's at 800 or 900 now. Teresa Wilson won nearly 1,000 games as a head coach. She was on staff there. There's been a lot of coaches that I've learned a lot from, but I've also learned from others that nobody's ever heard of, And I think nowadays it's the people in my inner circle that I talk to regularly. They're not necessarily coaching mentors; they're just peers now. I talk to Josh Johnson. Carlton Salters is someone in the hitting side I talk to 3 or 4 times a week. He challenges me to think differently and stuff like that. Anthony Oresco out at UNLV. There's a lot of people that I think those are not necessarily mentors, but they're people that I talk to more regularly now about how we're doing things now. But there's certainly been plenty of people I've worked for. I've learned from every person I've ever worked for.
Do you think the nature of what you talk about has changed since the early days of your coaching? So, and how has it then?
It depends on who I'm talking to, but at the same time, we get a lot more technical and a lot deeper into some thoughts and ideas and just coaching in general. Now, it is definitely a lot different now coaching kids than it was even 10 years ago, and especially 15 years ago. When I was at Holy Cross, the smart kids always needed to know the why, like the why and the how. It used to be the high academic kids, like their brains just work a little differently. They need to know why they're doing this and step by step and explain it in a smart way. Well, now kids have these phones in their hand and they're all like that. If they think you're full of crap, they can probably find it pretty easily somewhere else. And so, you have to have a real understanding and knowledge of what you're doing and what you're explaining, or be willing to admit, I think this is the case, but it might not be. We've certainly changed the nature of what we talk about in terms of how the body moves. It used to be, you did A, B, and C no matter what. And probably throwing and catching is the only thing that's still the same for every kid. And even that's not entirely the case, because some kids are comfortable getting lower. Some kids have to stay more upright.
Yeah, that brings me. I want to ask you a quick question about that. So, what is one area that you think young players tend to overlook when they're trying to level up their game? You talked about doing some things differently for each kid and the how and the why. Like, is there a certain area that you think players overlook? I mean, we talked a little bit about throwing overhand. I mean, even if you want to put that in the pitching perspective, or whatever hat you want to throw on that one.
I would go with, in general, moving their feet. If you ever watch big leaguers play catch, they move their feet. Their feet are always under them. They're like cats. I love going to a big league game, or even a high level college baseball game or minor league game or whatever. And, their feet are always underneath them with every throw they make. And, the bigger thing is how they control their head. I think whether you're throwing, hitting, or catching, how you control your head probably dictates more than anything else how, quote unquote, softball athletic you are. If you can control your head movements, you're going to be able to control your body movements. And it's sort of a chicken or egg thing. Like, is it your feet that affect that, or is it your head? Depends on how you feel. I think, if you always put your feet and your body in good positions, your head will stay in a good position. But if you don't know how to put your body in good positions, then your head is going to balance itself left or right, because your body's self-defense mechanism of don't fall will always supersede whatever task you're trying to do in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that. So how do you balance kind of the traditional coaching methods with some of the new modern technology and data? I know we're going to talk to you a lot about data here and analytics, but so how do you balance those two things? Because I see a lot of people that are like, and maybe this is wrong, but people are always talking about ball flight data, which I think is totally valuable. But I also have kids that can get the job done, and their ball flight data isn't the greatest, right? So, I think, how do you combine both of those things, Nick?
I think you're always combining both. Okay. At the end of the day, you've got to throw it. You got to throw it over the plate, and your goal is to try to miss bats. You can have really good ball flight data, but not throw enough strikes, and ultimately that doesn't matter. You can have bad ball flight data and throw enough strikes, but at some point you're gonna level out to a certain extent. Like, whether that's, hey, you're good enough to throw 3 innings, but you're not good enough to throw 7, or, you can't pitch at this level because, your ball does, whether it's fastball, curveball, rise ball, drop ball, your ball does the same thing. Okay. So you have to balance both of, one, I need to know what your ball flight data is. And then ultimately it's my job to take the traditional methods and say, okay, here's what your ball does. How do we get people out with it? If that makes sense. Like, I'm not a Rhapsody everyday person or pitch log. I've been using the pitch logic ball, and I'm still not even like every day. It's just a check-in.
Yeah.
At this point, I kind of know, your ball flight data is a little bit like your fingerprint. You can make it a little bit better, but it is hard to do that at the college level because the hard part with fall ball is we don't ever really get a chance to just be like, you're not facing hitters for a while. And, when you try to scramble their brains with new pitch ideas, sometimes that can have you've got to take a step back before you take 2 steps forward. And we don't ever really have the time until you get into individuals to really be able to do that. So, I mean, I think just balancing the two is, you go out, you throw your bullpen, and, you try to piece together what their ball does and how can you make it better. And at the end of the day, I always say the hitter tells you what works and what doesn't.
True.
Very true.
So do you ever wonder sometimes if we're getting too data driven to the point where if people get too focused on the numbers and don't take the human aspect into account?
Now, if anything in softball, I think it's still the opposite. We're still looked at as, the human element matters more. I mean, yeah, it probably does to a certain extent, but like, take a look around Major League Baseball right now. If you don't throw 100, it's hard to win this point in the season, if you're not throwing a lot of gas, if your ball's not doing a bunch of different things, you can't just really go out there with guts and guile anymore. Clayton Kershaw found that out the other night coming out of the bullpen. Like, it's not like he didn't have heart and guts and guile or any of those things, but like, the stuff's not there anymore. When it's not there, you're not getting people out. I don't think it's used enough. I think a lot of people just, it's a tool to them, and it validates what they want to hear. I think more people fear it because they don't like being told, either as a coach, they're not good enough, or it can be humbling to be like, oh, I can teach a rise ball in 3 months, and then you keep putting them on a pitch logic or a Rhapsody, and that ball still tumbles at 6 o'clock down. It's like, yeah, just because you throw it up there doesn't mean you're actually teaching them a rise ball. And I think at the younger levels, we really don't do it enough. And it's because we're not spending the time to teach them how to spin the ball in the correct direction.
That's a great statement. I got to interject. I got to ask you a question, Nick, just because you said that. And I couldn't believe that even more so about what you said. So what are your thoughts on bullet spin? Because I've been to some conventions and I've had people that have done presentations that say, bullet spin is okay. And again, I think it's going to happen, but what are your takes on that? Because I'm always trying to get my kids to spin the ball with a really good axis. And that's the thing. Where are you at with bullet spin compared to, more of a pure spin?
Well, I would prefer more pure spin, but that goes back to the human element here. If a kid's throwing 67 and commands it really well and it's bullet spin, cool, good enough. Cool. We can change speeds. Sure, that'll work. Because ultimately, the harder you throw it, the less important ball movement is to a certain extent. And there is a point too of if you throw it 67, the ball doesn't have time to move that much. Okay. You see baseball four-seam fastballs at, plus 18 to plus 22. Well, that 17 feet of difference is what allows for that. I saw a kid the other day with on their pitch logic, which is pretty close to Rhapsody. I haven't quite figured out what the exact difference is, but it's pretty darn close, with a plus 11 on a rise ball. Well, it was really like an off-speed rise at 52. Okay, so that ball took longer to travel to get to home plate. So because it's high spin, it picked up 2 or 3 extra, 4 or 5 more inches than what a kid throwing. I would venture to guess if she threw that at 65, it's probably only a plus 6 because it's just doesn't have the time to get there. It doesn't have the time to move that far. But in terms of bullet spin, sure, it works if you throw hard enough and you can command, like you said before, Ken, almost anything can work if you do that. But when you come to me at 57 with bullet spin and not a whole lot of movement and 3 of your pitches do the exact same thing, and you're probably gonna get pummeled. It's just what's gonna happen, and that's sort of the area where people don't like to hear that.
Yeah, well, it can definitely be humbling when you think you're doing well with a pitch and then you put it on something like pitch logic and you see, oh, it wasn't quite the spin we were hoping for. Although, when I run into that, what I'll usually try to tell the pitcher is say, look at how effective you've been so far doing what you're doing. If we can fix this, if we can get a better spin axis, if we can do this or that with it, it's just going to make it that much better.
Right. That's ultimately what you have to tell them. But again, there's a ceiling for everybody in every sport. And that's probably the hardest thing for people to realize and accept. I joke all the time, my ceiling in basketball was my freshman year of college. I walked onto campus as a 6'3", 170-pound shooter and realized I was too slow to cover guards and I was too small to cover forwards. And, the dude who played my position broke the all-time scoring record in the conference, who's a little bit better shooter than me. And even though I was pretty good, there was really only room for one guy on the floor who couldn't guard the logo at center court. Robbie did a little bit better than me.
Yeah.
At 19, I refused to acknowledge that. I blamed the coach and all the same stuff that everybody does. And then you realize later, no, I was not ready to play. I was good enough to be a part of things, but I wasn't ready to play. And had I kept going with it, I probably would have been good enough to play. I sometimes wonder if I had kept going with it, where my career would have taken me, because that kid that I was just talking about is the assistant GM of the Thunder. So
Yeah.
one of our college teammates before that, who graduated before we got there, is the GM of the Thunder. And so my little college basketball program has 11 former alums in the NBA now. So, I always wonder sometimes. I joke all the time, like, my first love was basketball and I married softball. And I have no regrets, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you always wonder, what if I married my first love? Might have been in the NBA last year.
Yep. Well, and it's funny because, you bring up a good point, Nick. And this is something, again, I think that Jay and I both try to tell our kids is the value of learning a secondary position. So, you may be a great shortstop on your travel ball team, let's say. All right. You've been the shortstop there, but you get to your high school and there's somebody there that's the best shortstop that ever played there, and she's a year ahead of you. Well, you got either 3 years on the bench or you better find another place to play. Same thing in college. You might have been the star shortstop on your high school team, but so was everybody else when you get to college. So, only one of those is going to be on the field, and everybody else either better find another position or they're going to be on the bench.
Exactly. I needed to become a better defender, and I didn't do that in enough time. I still can't defend. It's okay. I'll score 20 and give up 19 and we'll win.
So, Nick, what's your take on some of the tech-based tools like the weighted balls, velocity-focused training? Is that something that you guys are doing there at Rutgers? Are you using a lot of plyo balls?
I love plyo balls. I think they fix a lot of flaws a lot quicker than almost anything else, because a ball is the weight is evenly distributed. And so when you have mechanical flaws, and almost every kid does at this point, like there's so many pitching coaches, and not enough is focused on how your body wants to move, how to load correctly. And so ultimately you throw 10,000 pitches and you learn to create compensations. I can throw it anywhere I want, anytime, but my compensations have sapped velocity from me and put a ceiling on it. Same thing when we talk about a ceiling, like, I don't do the things that I teach because mainly I figured out that I've got bad habits, and at 42, I can overcome them. But there's a reason why I don't throw much more than 63 or 64 anymore. Okay. And why I didn't get to 75 and is as a pitcher myself when I played. I hit my ceiling, and I figured out, like, I have to throw strikes, I have to change speeds, and I have to command better than anybody else. That's the only way I get hitters out when I play. And so I wish I'd had plyo balls years ago. I probably would have been able to fix a lot of that stuff, because the way the weight shifts in those things really puts your body in bad positions quickly. Even heavy balls. I like using heavy balls and light balls and things like that, but when the weight is evenly balanced, you can put your body in bad positions and create a compensation to still be able to throw strikes. It's really hard to do that when the weight of the plyo ball is shifting constantly with whatever position you're putting your body in. So I find those to be extremely helpful.
How heavy of a ball would you use for a softball pitcher, and at what effort levels?
I think the highest we go is 12 ounces. We start at 50 and maybe get to 75 in terms of effort level, percent-wise. Good luck trying to get kids to figure out what their 75 is, or even what their 50 is.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually smart enough to figure out the 50 is like the first 6 to 10 throws to just sort of get the arm moving in a circle. And then the 75 tends to bleed into 80 or 90, but it is what it is.
So, Nick, I want to jump forward a little bit here. And how did you first get connected with the USA Men's Fast Pitch 23 and under team? How did that come about for you?
I kind of cheated. The head coach has been my catcher for off and on for the last 15 years. So some of it was pure dumb luck of the timing of when their tournament was last month in Argentina. Was a hard time for a lot of college, a couple of the other guys who've been in the program who've thrown batting practice for him, coach in college. and they had a hard time getting the two people that they do have used regularly couldn't get off. And so Tony Oresco, the head coach, and we're very, very close. He called me and was like, if you think you can get the time off, I'd love to have you. I give all the credit to Coach Butler at Rutgers. I basically started a new job and said, hey, I'm going to come for a week and then I'm going to leave for 2 weeks. Is that okay? And she was just like, oh yeah, no, that's an awesome opportunity. You should go do that. So it was a really cool experience. The hard part with the men's game is you don't really get to coach them because, we had 2 practices and one was a scrimmage, one was a little practice, and then we were off playing. There just isn't the money essentially, and it's through not anybody's fault. It's just expensive to house 15 kids and run them through 2 or 3 weeks of practice. And at the end of the day, like, it's really no preparing for that level of velocity that we saw. Even we talked about it, like 7 of the 8 countries in Argentina for the Pan Am Games had an arm throwing 78 or better. We didn't expect that. Like we thought it'd be like 70, 75 for the most part. And there was a couple that were going to touch 80. Everybody had somebody throwing rockets. I mean, we came out the first game and the dude from the Dominicans throwing 85 to 87 drops. And we were just
wow.
Whoa, okay, that's different. We knew our pitcher could do that because, Marco Diaz is the best arm in the world right now. He's won the last 2 IAC World Championships and, he could do that, but we didn't expect everybody else to be able to do that. And that probably made it, made Marco a little more human too. He did great. And ultimately the tournament just it was old school fast pitch from the 90s. The first mistake, that's who won. We beat the Dominican because we did the old get him on, get him over, and he threw a wild pitch and we scored. We lose to Mexico because we made a mistake. It just, that was the way those games went was, you got one opportunity and you better not screw it up.
So was this your first time coaching men, at least fast pitch?
Yeah. I've coached younger kids coming along since I've started playing, again, coaching's probably the wrong word. It's more just mentoring, hey, I've been through it. This is what I've seen. Because again, there's no real practice. There's not, part of why I probably didn't develop as much is because I just had to kind of figure a lot of it out on my own. And because you don't have pitching lessons and things like that to go to, you go and you throw to a wall. And, I still remember early in my career when I started trying to work on stuff during the league and one of my catchers throwing the ball back and being like, this isn't practice. It's 95 degrees and I'm pouring sweat out here. I'm not chasing your wild pitches while you're trying to figure out a drop ball. And so, that was kind of the lesson of, okay, I guess I have to go figure out how to do this on my own. And, when you don't have ball flight and things, again, the technology that's available now is so, I wish I had it. I might've been able to learn a rise ball a whole lot faster knowing, oh yeah, it's spinning in the right direction versus now I got to wait until I go out to a game and I'm comfortable enough to throw it and find out, oh, nope, that doesn't spin with backspin because I have to ask the umpire for a new ball. That one just got hit to 400 feet. So, you sit there and practice like, I got a rise ball now. It's like, no, I just threw a fastball high. It took a while to get that. So I've always tried to help younger kids who are playing. The U.S. experience is kind of no different.
Is there a difference to you between coaching the men and coaching females?
I would have thought that, but honestly, now, no, I don't think there is. I'm going to be the old man yelling at clouds right now, but I find this, it was interesting for that 2 weeks was this generation. I'm used to the girls and, I thought the guys were, sort of the same way of like, you strike out 2 times, you go kind of to your phone, you find your own echo chamber, feeling bad for yourself. It was interesting that I expected a little bit more. F that guy, I'm going to get him this time. And it wasn't really that. I'm trying to be careful how I say that.
Well,
I have.
yeah.
If you want to pause the recording for a moment, I will give you my answer.
We'll do that after we're done recording here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I can see that, and I think every generation thinks that the generation that comes after them is soft, so it's probably not that unusual.
I've never thought that, and like I don't even think this generation's soft. Girls have always been more image conscious. They don't like to look bad. Swinging and missing to them, it sometimes feels like the end of the world. Whereas a dude playing baseball loves to take a big hack and be like, "Go ahead, throw it to me again." I didn't see as much of that. And even watching the body language this isn't really necessarily my team, watching the body language of the other teams in these from opposing countries, it was a lot of the same stuff. And I just think it's a generational thing now of, you're used to being on your phone and going off into your own world and finding your people to tell you it's okay. We're just as a whole a lot more image conscious than we used to be.
Yeah, and it's probably easier to find your tribe too, because you've got a much bigger universe you can tap into.
Yeah, and you just want to get away sometime. I mean, look, it's not fun to strike out 3 times, but that's the nature of men's fast pitch at a higher level. You're gonna miss bat. You're gonna miss the ball a lot.
So, Nick, what was it like for you representing the United States on that international stage? What was that like?
It was really cool. I mean, it's, you don't really realize it until you put that USA jersey on and you're just like, wow, this is real. And so, it was a special honor and definitely a bucket list item that I never thought I'd ever achieve. And, I was grateful for the opportunity.
From that experience that you had, what were some of the lessons that you took away from that, like coaching, working with those pitchers that are throwing, like you said, 85 miles an hour with
you want the true lesson?
Yeah.
The pitching coaches we think are really, really good because they've produced really, really good pitchers and coaching really high level pitching don't have to do very much. I've kind of said this privately, and this will get some blowback, but like I have probably a little less respect for the quote unquote best pitching coaches in the game now, because it really wasn't very hard when you look at Marco Diaz and he bounces a changeup and you go, hey, just keep your arm moving a little bit more, or keep your arm moving all the way through it, which I think was the only thing I said to him all week on one, because he bounced 2 of them and I was like, hey, you just pause in the middle of that like you're trying to change speeds automatically. Just put, keep your arm moving. Flips the next one in for a strike and is throwing it in the game a little bit. Like, that's a lesson that you spend 10 minutes on with somebody else. He's the best in the world. You don't really need to coach that. You just give somebody like that a quick cue or reminder and stay the hell out of his way. That's really all you're trying to do there, And I mean, I give him credit. And Cody Gibbons, the other one who pitched really, really well for us there and is a really good young pitcher. Like, they're sponges. They wanted to hear stuff, but there isn't a whole lot of coaching to those kind of things. You're hey, be on time. I mean, that there isn't that much to it, but you certainly can develop pitchers. But I think we probably give outsized credit to a lot of people that get handed really good data, really good velocity, and it's like, hey, congratulations, you just didn't screw it up. Yeah,
I think that is very true. Is that those 1% athletes, they're going to find the way. You just got to stay out of their way and give them a little bit of guidance, a little bit of encouragement, and tell them, here, maybe try this. And then, did you find them when you did offer suggestions? Were they very receptive to it?
Oh yeah, I joked with Marco in the beginning. I was like, I'm not here to coach you. I'm just here to watch and learn from you. And he's like, no. Like, if you got anything, and so I said the one thing about that, and then he's threw it a few times in the game, and I mean, he doesn't throw a changeup very often. He doesn't have to. He's throwing 87, 88, 89 miles an hour. I gave 1 or 2 things. I probably coached the hitters and the younger kids a little bit more, those other kids more. But again, like, you're mostly there. I was there to throw batting practice, help offer insights. You're trying to teach the game because they are still college kids, and they do some stuff. Not all of them have played at the highest level yet in ISC and men's. So you're just trying to teach the game in little situations. You're not. I don't want to say you're babysitting. You're not doing that, but you're just trying to do what you can in the limited amount of time that you have with them.
So, did you bring anything from that USA coaching experience? Even though it was brief, but did you bring anything back to your everyday coaching? Is there something that you went, I think I can incorporate that?
Definitely on the hitting side, we're talking a lot more about timing in when you get set, because, I think a lot of kids across the board, they don't really know. I know it's a pitching podcast, but they don't really know when they're supposed to get started in their swing. And most of them get started real late. They don't get to their spot fast enough, early enough, because where they have to get to create some resistance, they don't get to it before the ball gets released, or they start that in the pitcher's downswing. And, that was one of our problems with our hitters, was they were trying to get started with all their pre-pitch stuff and then trying to get loaded as the ball is coming out, as the pitcher's coming in in his downswing. It's like, well, if that ball is coming in at 80, guess what? You're late. I mean, I've got a video of a still picture of our best hitter from the tournament getting a swing off against somebody in which the ball is very clearly in the glove and his bat still is still in lag position. It's like, well, like, you got started late. Like, I think trying to explain to hitters, like, you don't get to dictate when you start. Well, I should say you do get to dictate when you start, but if you choose to wait until the pitcher does it, until the pitcher's going, like, you're going to be late.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not a pitching podcast, so, definitely talk all different aspects of it. We cover the whole gamut on that. So, and again, I doubt that this was the case in the men's fast pitch when you're doing the national team stuff. But, I also find sometimes with hitters, they get worried that they're going to be late. So they start too early and then they get themselves stuck. So it's like they start, they load, they pause, and then they try to get restarted, and then they're going to end up late that way. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, but I mean, there's a timing aspect of, like, you get started with your upper body, but you don't necessarily stride right away. The old get your foot down that's where they get stuck, because you just try to get your foot down early because you think that's the timing you need, but you don't get to you don't get to separation and the separation you need. Everybody's separation is a different point. And that's probably the next most underrated thing when it comes to the hitting side is, just because one person may have only needed to go to, a little bit, they teach every kid to be right here in their shoulders. Mm-hmm. And the next kid may need to be, Otani style with their early start separation. There's everybody requires a different distance to make that work. And I think, as a hitting coach, it's your job to find where that is for each kid.
Yep.
So,
and that's going to vary too by pitcher, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're going to be different for a kid that's throwing 57 versus 67.
It shouldn't necessarily be that different. The timing each time may be different, but where your spot is doesn't change.
Right.
So then,
I meant more the timing.
Oh yeah, and so your job is, how do you get to your spot for 57, 67, and 77?
Right.
That's what the on deck circle's for. And that was the hard part of not having enough time with the hitters when we were in Argentina, is you can't really teach an offensive philosophy with 2 days worth of work. And, the first time we watch them play is, we really see them play is the first time we play a real game. And you're like, okay, well, you throw that one out. It was 87. We just weren't ready. And then you get 82 and you're like, okay, well, he's probably the best pitcher in the tournament besides Marco. Okay. And now you're into day 3 and that dude's 78 and you're still like, okay. Now it's a problem, and, and again, hitting is so mental. You go 0 for the first 3 games, and even though we're 2-1, we aren't swinging the bat great. And, then we get the easy one. We go 3-1, feeling pretty good, and done a couple mistakes, and we still haven't really hit the ball, and, kind of limp to the finish.
So Nick, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here. I want to get into a little bit of recruiting, or at least evaluation, with you a little bit. Mm-hmm. People that are listening mostly to this are, parents and some coaches and stuff like that. What do you guys, and let's just put it in pitching if you want. What do you think? What are college coaches really looking for when you're evaluating, say, a pitcher or even a hitter, if you want?
I'll say across the board, like, who doesn't belong? Like, if you walk to the field and you go, which kid looks like they don't belong? Or which kid looks like this, just for lack of a term, looks different? The thing I said earlier about how well you control your head and how well you move your feet are probably the 2 things I notice first and foremost before anything else. There's a lot of people who can make the play, but will they make the play at the next level when everything has to be sped up a little bit faster? As a hitter, same thing. How well are you controlling your head? How well do you control your barrel? I say this all the time. Put your body in good positions. The kids who put their body in good positions all the time tend to be the best athletes and the best players. Not necessarily, look, everyone who's on our roster was better than most kids in travel ball, on the field, whatever. Or they were the best of their age group. That's another one of my favorite things, is like using my college basketball experience. Like, I was 18 and I was really good against every other 18-year-old. But you got to guard a 22-year-old. It's different. Mm-hmm. And that translates to softball too. Like, when you're an 18-year-old freshman and you're playing against somebody who's done this every day for 4 years, that is a gigantic talent gap.
Yes, it is.
Or I shouldn't say talent gap. It's a gigantic experience gap. And so the talent gap can shrink a little bit if you're really, really talented. But, my college basketball coach used to tell me all the time, you just don't know how to play yet. And I take that experience for myself. Is like, I played for a Hall of Fame high school basketball coach, but it was a very regimented, you go here on offense. And when the ball's here, you go here. Or not even that. It's when you go here, then this person goes here, then this person goes here. Well, we got to college, we played the Bobby Knight motion, which is when the ball's here, you go there, or you can go here, or you can go here. But you have to know where to go correctly based on what the ball did and where it's going and everything else. So you have to think 5 times faster and understand where the other 4 guys are going to be. I came to realize later on, like, he was right. I just didn't know how to play basketball the way he wanted to play. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of freshmen get here and they don't know how to play softball yet, just in terms of the speed of the game, where things have to happen, situations, everything else. Don't know how to play. When I'm looking for, and it's a long answer, but to sum it, like, I'm looking for the kid who doesn't belong or stands out. Tools matter. They just do. The skills, we can teach you the skills. And, because we get you for 20 hours a week for 9 months. I can teach you some of the skills. I can't make you throw 70 if you only throw 60. I can't make you hit it 70 if you only hit it 60. Okay? That's a big jump. That is a talent jump that just probably isn't going to happen. It doesn't happen for girls very often. Guys, you'll see a dude can walk onto campus as a 5'10", 175-pound scrawny kid, and he hits a late growth spurt, and he's suddenly 6'4", 225, and he's throwing 98. That doesn't really happen with girls. They are the size they are at 15 or 16. We might be able to get them a little bit more strength and athleticism in the weight room, but if you don't throw it hard enough, hit it hard enough, or move fast enough, you're probably not going to get to the level that's necessary when you get there. Like, at any point, you'll become a better player, but your tools aren't good enough to really ever get on the field. I say all the time, there's plenty of kids who will become better players just by practicing 20 hours a week. But if you don't have the juice and the horsepower, like, a crappy 4-cylinder engine isn't beating a Corvette in a race.
Right.
Unless the Corvette loses control and careens and hits a tree, you're never winning that race. So you have to hope for someone else to screw up for you to succeed. And I always say hope isn't a plan. So
yep. Very true.
What are we looking for? Pitching wise, like I look for ball flight, because if you don't have something that goes up or down and you don't have change of speed, I don't know how you survive at this level.
Are there any other things that someone can do at a showcase or, at a recruiting event or something like that to really make themselves stand out?
One of the things for position players is how you play catch. Because it goes back to what I just said. Like, do you move your feet? Do you have good feet? Do you get your thumb under the ball with the glove? Okay. When you catch with your palm forward like this, you see a lot of people do that, and they start to stab at it. That's a little insight. Oftentimes, it's one of two things. You're either lazy or you can't, or your depth perception isn't very good. And so what I've learned is if I see you catch the ball that way, I'm not really interested in finding out which one of those two it actually is.
Yeah, I can understand that.
In either case, I'm going to be pounding my head against a wall to a certain extent, because it has been, I have had to tell a couple of kids you can't see before. And one kid took it, ran with it, and did a great job with it. And the other kid didn't believe me. So I think it's important to have success, but we go to these showcases, we watch what you actually do. I'm more looking for, do you display the tools that look necessary? Because I can go watch plenty of videos on you to see you actually have success. I have a love-hate with kind of going to these things. I may have seen you on your best day. I may have also seen you on your worst day, which is also why the data matters to me of like, okay, you went 0 for 4, but you've come to camp and hit 70 miles an hour of exit velo off of my machine at 62 miles an hour. Yeah, you can hit. You just had a bad day. There's a million variables to success and non-success in our sport, but your tools aren't the variable. You either can do it or you can't. There's gas in that tank, there's juice in that bat, or there isn't.
And then how much does, for lack of a better term, character factor in as you're looking at a kid? Say the kid has the tools, but you're not sure that she has the maturity or the mental toughness or whatever you want to call it to handle adversity, because it is an adversity-based game.
I don't think you can ever truly know that. Now, character is a different question, because certainly you can kind of watch and see if a kid's just a jerk on the field sometimes, but they're always on their best behavior around us. But in terms of the mental toughness and how they handle failure and everything else, how hard they work, I don't think you can ever know that, because travel ball coaches are in the business of selling us kids. Ultimately, if they do tell me like, hey, I don't know that she works hard enough, like that's a major red flag, because and we all have relationships with some coaches who might be like with some travel teams and things, but you always like your own player and you always have some bias to your own players regardless. Okay. Even we deal with it now in the transfer portal. A coach calls me and I'm like, I'm not going to blow up this kid. I like her. I want her to have an opportunity, even if it didn't work out here. So there's always some inherent bias to the kids. So I don't think you can ever truly know that. You don't spend enough time with them to know truly who they are. So while character, yes, it's important if you're clearly not a jerk. If you're a child, can you tell me she's the hardest worker? Great. I've heard that 10 times already today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just because, it's the old, and I think that's one of to answer an earlier question a little bit, is like, don't mistake activity for achievement. No one ever sits here and thinks they don't work hard enough. If they do, they're probably not planning on playing college sports. Anyways, True. Everyone thinks they work hard enough, but they don't know what someone else is doing.
So Nick, I want to come back to you here for a minute, buddy. Again, thanks for all your time today. I really appreciate you hanging out with Ken and I talking softball. But what's next for you in your coaching journey? Are you happy? I'm sure you're happy where you're at, but
yeah.
Are you like staying in that element of being the pitching coach, hitting coach, or you ever have, aspirations to get back and be a head coach ever again?
I never rule anything out. I like it here. I'm close enough to home. I love Coach Butler, so my feet are here. I don't really think about what's next, because I think if you have a plan in coaching, you better have 3 plans, because prepare for that plan not to actually happen. Okay. In terms of what's next, I don't know. And like I said before, for 18 straight years now, since the first year, someone's called and said they want me. So the first question will be, does Coach Butler want me back? And then after that, see from there. I like it here. I think we can build something here. We're certainly, we're getting a new stadium here at Rutgers finally. And, we're starting to really pour some stuff into the program. And I think we can really build something to be successful here. So I don't really think about what's next. I've been blessed to have done everything that I could have even possibly imagined. I think the only thing left now would be the Women's Olympics for me. Having now done international ball on the men's side, I've been to 2 College World Series. I've been able to be a head coach. I have enough experience and everything now that just, if tomorrow I had to stop coaching, I really couldn't complain about the last 19 years. So everything from here on out is just gravy, and, I don't really have any kind of 5-year plan, anything else like that, because every situation is different.
Well, again, thanks, Nick, for spending time with us today. Ken, do you have any more questions for Nick? Or
no, I don't. I think he's given us a lot of great insights, and we really appreciate all the time you spent with us today.
No problem. Appreciate you having me on. I hope I answered some good questions without rambling too much and circling back over and over again.
You definitely did.
I don't know that I'm that interesting, but, we'll see, I guess.
No, it was very interesting. And again, good perspectives, and just a little bit of a different coaching journey as you went along, starting so early, going through all the different things, all the opportunities that have come along. And, we hope for more of those great opportunities to come along. If anybody from the Olympic coaching pools, the selection pool is listening, he's thrown his hat in the ring.
No, they have a great staff. I'm not. I just said that's probably the last thing on the list. So.
Hey, you never know.
I have a left arm that can throw batting practice. I'm willing to travel. That's pretty much how my career it has continued and continued to go. So, as long as it still moves in a circle, there's a market for someone to need batting practice. So.
For sure. All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Thank you to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you've been hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, share this podcast on your social media channels. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. If you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. On behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.